Welcome to Business Technicalities. Me and Brett want to talk about negotiations and BATNA, or best alternative to a negotiated agreement. This is defined as, let's see if we can read this
Let me
properly.
read
It
this.
is, yeah, it is defined as the most advantageous alternative to a negotiating party can take if negotiations fail, an agreement cannot be made. Sometimes an agreement cannot be made, correct, Brett?
That happens quite often, and it's funny because everything we do in life is a negotiation in some way, shape, or
Yes.
form, especially in business.
Especially in business. One of the things I think people do though is they keep lowering their standards to try to always get that deal.
Mhm.
And there comes a point of sacrifice where you have to realize, and it's harder to do in the early days of your business, but it's important and it's easier to do when you have a lot of business. So I understand the challenge of what you're willing to accept. But we recently went through some negotiations where we really wanted the client, we really wanted all the endpoints in the contract and everything that goes with
Mhm.
this client, but we had a standard and we had to meet it, and the client did not want to.
No, and that's part of what it is, and it's being as a matter of fact, especially when you're negotiating with somebody, not trying to get the feeling into it, but just stating the facts of what it truly is. I think that's important, and people tend to wanna dance around things a little bit. Be to the point.
Yes. And we were that I think that's why we ended up landing this recent one that started this discussion was they really wanted to squeeze us on the price. And we just said, no, this is a hard no. At some point, we cannot provide services at the quality we would like to provide them at by sacrificing ourselves and just doing.
Right.
I mean, he wanted a pretty substantial amount off, but we were very matter of fact, and we didn't want to spend a ton of time doing it. Like, these are the numbers. If they don't work for you, we understand, and maybe we're just not the right fit for each
Mhm.
other, but they're you have to have those. I actually learned a lot from my friend who had a wedding photography business. And even when he says he was hungry and not positive if he could keep his studio lights on, there was a moment because he did a lot of weddings, and the bride was extremely thinking I can just negotiate heavily with this new photographer to get him off of things. And she made all kinds of stipulations that she added to his contract. She was writing on his contract. And she says, "Oh, here, sign these to make sure you note that I've made all these changes." He says, "No problem." And he takes the piece of paper and he tears it in half and he sets it calmly on the table. He goes, "I don't think we're the right fit." He goes, "It
Mm.
really hurt," because he wasn't sure what was going to happen next. And he was a wedding photographer, charged quite a bit. And she just panicked. And the next day apologized for her behavior and says, "I want you to be a photographer. I won't add anything to your contract." So he actually ended up winning it, but it was kind of one of those lessons learned. He goes, even though I was hungry, even though I thought the lights wouldn't be on,
Mhm.
he goes, sticking to that. It was how he built a very successful photography business, was really focusing on that high end. And it's hard when you're in the earlier days of your business, but it just kind of gets easier as it goes. And you feel better about it because if you give someone half off, how do you feel about servicing that client that you're doing for like half when they have a lot of
Right.
issues?
You don't feel well about it. I mean,
Mm-mm.
negotiation is a give and take,
Yeah.
correct? There's some compromise on both sides, but what you're willing to compromise is the important part of it. You should never compromise value, what you can offer, your value, and that equates to price. So if you set a price for something and they want to negotiate it down, it becomes almost this conundrum of every time you work with them, like you said, it's going to be an issue.
Yep. And this is where that word BATNA comes in. It
Mhm.
is already pre-planned. You know what's going to happen if this deal doesn't go through. You've got something in
Yep.
your head, and hopefully the other party does too. Because if the terms can't be reached, in this particular client we were speaking of, they're already using us as a contractor in terms of when they need things. We just weren't doing their
Mhm.
managed services for them. So, but the alternative, even me and the client were in some agreement that if we can't reach an agreement for your recurring managed of things we're going to do, we'll still continue being
Right.
friendly and we'll still continue on a hourly basis, just
Yep.
fixing the things you need
Yep.
fixed at your office and doing the projects that you need done, which is what we've been doing with the client for years. So having that already in there, it also makes the negotiations process of what if this doesn't work. This goes even broader if you're thinking about like if you want to merge two companies together. What each
Mhm.
person wants something to make this happen, but what's your alternative if it doesn't? Is it do or die, or is it, oh, I can just keep doing what I'm doing, or I can, I have this alternative, or maybe
Right.
even more than one person you're looking to merge with, so you can kind of figure out it either a fit or it isn't. I have a couple other options, and you can be upfront with the party about that ahead of time. It
Mhm.
saves you a lot of time in negotiating if everyone just lays it out on a table. We're going to make this happen for this amount. If this is not acceptable to you, we're okay. We don't have to sit at this
Yeah.
table very long.
Yes. People need to remember there's always light at the end of the tunnel, right?
Yeah,
There's always something there at the end. Things are going to happen. Things are gonna progress in a way that maybe you have no control over. It's okay. Things will progress. It's just what you do to help those in the progression and how you actually take to heart, not to heart. I don't want to put feelings into it because negotiations isn't about feelings. It is, but
right.
it is. It's about a matter of fact. So,
Keeping it to that, and there's
yeah.
obviously, some cultural differences because some cultures feel like they should
Mhm.
negotiate more. I'm not among that. Figure out what your tolerance is for sitting at a table, if it's an hour or if it's 10 minutes like it is for
Yeah.
me. That is, I will admit that's something I've run into when you deal with people from, different areas, but figure out
Yeah.
what is work to you, set the boundaries, set the meeting time, do all those things ahead of time so the
Right.
negotiations go well. And as I said in the beginning, this is going to be really hard at the beginning of your business. It gets easier as you have more clients because
Mhm.
this client does not make or break what goes on at my company. We really do appreciate the business. It's not to be dismissive of that we don't want to grow, but we want to grow properly. And I'm at a point where I really can focus on that. So it gets easier
Right.
as the years progress, as best I can put it.
Oh, absolutely. And the client we kinda discussed in this is a client we really like working with. We
Yeah, we
really
enjoy working
enjoy
with them.
working
He just
and
didn't think we should be paid that much. That's
well, and rightfully so. When we were, as a matter of fact, when we had the discussion, it became apparent that, yeah, this is what the price should be.
yeah.
Um,
And
and
often there's statements of value that were
Mhm.
misunderstood. So they didn't understand why the recurring charges would be that high, in
Right.
which you spend a lot of time in those negotiations. And this is really specific to managed services or any type of contract services you provide on a recurring basis, not one time. But you really have to understand the value you provide, and you have to be able to articulate it to the client so they understand
Right. Oh,
why
yeah.
they're paying. These are
Absolutely.
what we do, because they understood us and they understood the value from our hourly rates, but they had a hard time understanding, which is weird. I know for a company that's been working with us for like 4 years now, they had a hard time understanding the contract rates for recurring. But once we understood and expressed the value to them and had, that was where the disconnect was. And they go, oh, I
Mhm.
understand better what you'll be doing now. Everyone
Absolutely.
agreed, contracts are signed, money's flowing,
That's right.
and
And,
services are being rendered.
that service is being rendered.
Yep.
We could talk about that probably this one for about an hour, but yeah, hey, it's
We'll keep
it's
it
it's
we'll keep
just
it
a
this
good
short.
tidbit.
Thanks for joining us. Like and
Yes.
subscribe, and see you next time. Let us know what your thoughts are down below.